Welcome to a very special episode 4 of the Expert Cruise Show. And the reason that it's extra special is because I am actually currently sailing through Alaska on the Celebrity Edge, the first of the Edge class cruise ships. And I'm currently on day 4, or possibly just coming into day 5. It's pretty late at night, of this amazing voyage. And Chris, I know you're a huge fan of this ship. You saw it when it was in Australia. It's my first time on the Edge. I've been on the Beyond before, so I have lots of things to say about it. But most importantly, and that is that I booked a regular cabin, and I was offered the Celebrity Move-Up option, and I bid the second lowest bid to move up to a Sky Suite. And I was successful. So I bid $705 per person, and I won it. And so I am in now the equivalent of a $10,000 Sky Suite. So I have changed the background to a photograph that I took yesterday as we were sailing into Ketchikan.
What a beautiful part of the world.
Beautiful. I'd never been to Alaska.
No.
Completely just really, truly the last frontier. So today I thought we would talk about my experience of the Celebrity Retreat, of Lumine, of the Retreat Lounge, of the Retreat Sun Deck, and just how Celebrity Edge is looking.
You told me about your successful bid after we recorded episode 3, where you said you wouldn't go in the retreat.
That's right. I said
so
a
I'd
retreat
love
was...
to know. I'd love to know what it's. I mean, I guess that's the thing, right? You got it for what, $760? Did you say?
I paid an extra $1,400 to get the retreat for myself and my wife. The key with the retreat, if you're going to do it, and if you really want to do it, and I'll save my conclusion for a little while, just to build the jeopardy. But it's no good if you've paid like top price for, say, a Sky Suite already. Like, we have friends on board who paid top price for a Sky Suite, and they were thinking, oh, maybe we should move up to to something higher, which was like an Edge villa or something like that. and I'm like, well, you've already paid like nearly 10 grand. So it's going to be another 6 grand to do the upgrade on the Celebrity Move Up. So you're actually then just paying the same as it would have cost if you were going to book an Edge villa in the first place. So the secret, I think, to make Move Up work is to get an inside cabin or the next run up. The only issue then is that because of the way the software works to move you up, somebody is going to want your cabin because it's a revenue generator. So if you're in an inside cabin, you're going to have less chance of winning the bid because fewer people are going to want an inside cabin. More people are going to want, say, a standard balcony or an infinite veranda.
I was just going to ask. We're going to wait till the end for your opinion of the whole thing. But
I think people probably know what it is already.
Well, I think, you're always nice and balanced. But if the room is $10,000 off the brochure, are you willing to reveal how much total you paid?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we have no secrets on this show. I got... initially, I booked an ocean view cabin on deck 3, which I favor. But then I read some stuff and people talking and saying, if you're doing Alaska, you have to have a balcony. It's really important to have a balcony. And I would concur with that now. If you're doing Alaska, a balcony really is important because the thing is, there are things going on past your balcony all the time, which you're not going to have time to get dressed and go up onto deck to photograph and to see with your oown human eyes. And
you've been sending some amazing photos, right? You've just been sending such great pictures from that balcony.
It's epic. I didn't even think it was possible to see visuals that I have now seen with my human eyes. So I initially booked an ocean view, and then I think I paid $300 to upgrade that, not with Celebrity Move Up, but I just phoned and said, how much would it cost for me to get a porthole veranda? Because, as you know, at the very forward and the very aft of the Celebrity Edge class ships, they have these round portholes, which are balconies that you can actually undo the door and step outside and be in a kind of sheltered, kind of round balcony with a clear glass, balcony ledge.
So not the infinite veranda design.
Not the infinite veranda. I didn't want that. I appreciate how fantastic they are, but I don't like... There's a few things about it that frustrate me, and I think that it's a bit of a waste of space. I like to be outside. I don't like the noise of the thing going up and down, how slow it is. The blackout is like... You either have total blackout or no blackout. That's not like in between with curtains and things. So anyway, that aside, I moved up from a porthole. So my total spend was around... I think it was around $1,800 for the two people for a week in Alaska.
Goodness.
And then, so if you add $1,400 to that, which was what I spent on, not the lowest was $690 as an option. I did the second lowest, which was an extra $15. So $705 per person, $1,410 in total. And that got me a sky suite, which is where I'm talking to you from now.
There you go.
Hence the bright lights, because I'm sitting at the vanity, which has that strip of fluorescent light either side, so it's reflecting off my glasses. But yeah, this is a photo that I took a couple of days ago, and I've learned a lot. I've never been in the retreat before. I've made as much use of it as I can in the retreat lounge and the retreat sun deck, although it's not a fair weather cruise, so there's hardly anybody out there. But it's been a very interesting experience.
Yes, I've got so many questions.
Luminae as well. Okay, well, I'm all ears, so you go for it. You hit me with the questions.
All right, so the first question I really would love to get my head around is how does this bidding system work? I mean, how do you get that room for that price?
So the bidding is actually run by a separate company. It's not done by Celebrity, which I find kind of interesting that they've kind of outsourced this. And you'll only get the option to bid if you're signed up for promotional emails. If you're not signed up for promotional emails, you won't get the email that says, would you like to move up? And I received the email about maybe about a week out from the sailing. Originally, the first email I wasn't going to do because they wanted $990.
They have like a minimum point.
Yeah, that was the minimum bid. And then they show you, it's like the airlines do this as well. They have a sliding scale, and then you can choose. It's probably the same company that does it for the airlines, using the same software. And then within 3 or 4 days, they sent one with the word promo written in big letters, in red letters. Promo. Reduced, lowest bid reduced from $990 to $690. And I was like, whoa, now you're talking. And because I had friends that were already paying full price in the retreat, and I felt a bit sad that we were traveling together and we were going to be segregated because they didn't really realize when they booked it and paid full price that we weren't going to kind of be together to eat and stuff like that. So, yeah, I just was like, let's just go for it. So I put in the second to lowest bid, and then I didn't hear anything for 3 or 4 days. And then a day before we were due to travel, I saw my credit card charge come up for the $1,400, and I was like, whoa, we won it. That's crazy. Yeah.
Did you tell your friends the price?
Well, this is a bone of contention because, my friends, they love paying retail. And as you know from my recommendations, like never pay retail. It's like you really want to get on a cruise for as little money as possible. And then your expectations are pretty low, I think if you overpay and it doesn't meet your expectations, then it can be very frustrating.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is always try and pay the least that you can with a cabin that you're happy with. And then, you'll never be disappointed. And so that was kind of my view, and I still feel like, we paid so little in total, really. It's still cheaper than a lot of people might be paying for an infinite veranda because I got such a good deal when I booked it in the first place. And so we're not overpaying, and yes, it's worth it. But it's worth it for the room, for the real estate. Because remember, when you do Celebrity Move Up, you don't get the drinks package that is included normally. You don't get the Wi-Fi package. Right. And so, there's a few of the perks. You don't get the kind of extra fluffy robes. You just get regular robes. I don't know why they bother with all that. I'll be honest, I don't know why they bother. Yeah, they change the robes. They give you a kind of grey luxury robe if you're paying full price. But if you're on move up, they just give you a regular white robe.
That would be like boarding the aeroplane on an upgrade and finding they didn't have bedding.
Or pajamas. I agree.
How strange.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I just think that it's so finicky, the idea that, we're on move up, so we are sweet guests, but we're kind of not sweet guests, and can we order this drink? Well, you can get free alcoholic beverages in the retreat lounge, but you can't order them, you just have to take what's there. Sure. It's all very confusing, and I just wish that a celebrity would be more generous and be like, yeah, you can have everything. Just like you got the cabin, you get everything that should come with the cabin.
Sure.
So that's a little disappointing.
But the cabin itself is worth it.
So here's the thing. The Sky Suite is the cheapest of the suites that are available that get you into the retreat. And it's a 299 square foot cabin. The one that I'm in is 312 square feet. Some have a slightly bigger balcony and slightly smaller room, and then some are oriented the other way. Mine is the one with the bed facing the balcony. It's the largest of them. It's a fantastic cabin. It's a great cabin, especially for Alaska, because you can lie in bed and you can watch Alaska kind of sail past you. And so I kind of feel like from that perspective, it's great, but it's only 100 feet larger than a regular cabin, a regular infinite veranda, or even the cabin that I'd previously booked, the porthole veranda. So, I don't know. My wife loves it. She thinks it's great and she thinks it's worth it. But for my money, I don't know. I think, you're not in the room that often. I don't know that the extra 100 feet makes any difference. And here's the interesting thing is that the suite is exactly the same furnishings and finish as all the regular rooms right down to inside. So it's the same vanity, it's the same furniture, it's the same size TV, the lighting is the same, the bathroom fixtures are the same. You get an upgraded body wash, but who cares? And it has a separate cubicle for the toilet, but that's in the bathroom, so it's not like you can really be that separate,
Yeah. That's interesting,
so it's not
because
really
I guess
a suite at all, Chris.
Yeah, I guess the downside of all the cabins at such a high grade is that then the suites don't stand out as much as they might do on lesser ships.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I always thought a suite was more than one room and a separate bathroom. So you should have a living room and a separate bedroom. And so this isn't that. They call it a studio. It's basically just a bigger cabin. Yeah, it's a bigger cabin. And so it's not really worth it. I think the only thing that people would be interested in from the perspective of being in the retreat is having segregation. And it's to be segregated from the masses, to have your separate pool area, your separate dining room, and your separate lounge. And, the one thing I've really missed with the segregation is people watching.
Oh,
the whole point of being on a cruise is just watching other people and talking to your partner about other people and making up names for other people and all these things, having some fun with it. And there's a lot less people watching to do when you're segregated and then you're in a lounge where there's no footfall. It's not on the way to anywhere for anybody. So you're just all basically sitting around in silence.
I was going to say, would you say you've spent more time behind the closed door of the retreat or more time in the general part of the ship then?
I'd say more time in the general part of the ship. And here's one of the reasons. The retreat dining room is open so infrequently for such short periods.
Interesting.
That I've spent most of my time eating in the Ocean View Cafe, the buffet.
Okay.
And so
you in the buffet.
To me, if all the time, because the Ocean View Cafe is the only alternative. When I want to eat, the retreat is shut. And so, the luxury aspect of being in the retreat should be that you can eat whenever you want. Mm-hmm. And yet they're very strict. You only get an hour and a half. You get from 7 till, 7:30 till 9, I think, or maybe it's earlier than that. Maybe it's 7 till 8:30 for breakfast. It's an hour and a half. It's very narrow and it's early.
Why do they do that?
And then I don't know. And then for lunch, again, it's from like 11:30 till 1 or something. It's very narrow.
So can you not eat in the main dining room?
Maybe I would be there more. Yeah, I can eat in the main dining room, and I have eaten in the main dining room, and I have to say it was great. You know, the celebrity is so good on the edge class of giving you these very personal experiences in these 4 smaller dining rooms. Mm-hmm. And so what is the offering in the retreat? People might ask. Well, celebrity market it as an upscale dining experience. Enhanced, that's right, an enhanced dining experience. I'll be honest, the food has been anything but enhanced. I would say the food is worse in the retreat than it is in the main dining room.
Is this more, because we're showing pictures, now of what it looks like. You've taken a lot of photographs. And would you say it's more about the expectation, or is it more about the way that they've done that menu that makes it not great for you?
Well, for example, if you order a steak in the main dining room, you'll just get a steak. That's it. That's all that will be on the plate. A steak and some French fries, maybe, or a mashed potato, whatever you order. Sure. But in Illuminate, you get a steak, but they've drizzled it with a kind of onion jus, and they've put scallions, and they've added some little kind of garnish. And it's over prepared, it's over designed,
right.
It's not necessary. So they've tried to kind of put a bow tie on everything, and it actually devalues the experience a little bit. And also, the biggest issue, I think, is the service. It is over the top. It is too attentive. It is too personable. They talk to you all the time. And I don't know about you, but I don't want that. I don't want to talk to people. I don't mind the initial pleasantries, but I don't want to have conversations. I would have thought that in a higher end experience, they would be a little more hands-off and just a little bit more focused on the service. But it seems like if you want the service, you've got to have a dozen conversations that you weren't really prepared for.
Sure. So when you think about that kind of style of service, because obviously you've come to it, as we've discussed in previous episodes, with experience at the Savoy and with British style of luxury service, and traveling on the Queen Mary tour across the Atlantic and the Kiwi tour before, where service is very much designed to be sort of more subtle. But who would that level of hyper attentive, personable service, who would that appeal to? How are your friends finding it, for example?
Well, they love it. They're really having a very nice time, and they just go with the flow, and they're totally cool. And I'm not like that. I'm not uptight, but I like it a certain way. And I don't think that American cruise ships, I don't think they offer a kind of chic, high-end level of service. They just don't train for that. Sure. And so, like I say, I would have preferred for the Lumine dining room to be open all day, from 6 a.m. for breakfast to 10 p.m. at night, and I should have been able to show up. I should be able to have breakfast at 4 o'clock in the afternoon if I choose to. That is the joy of being a suite guest, is that you get full access, but none of that.
That's the way it would
windows.
Be. Yeah. You really would think that's it. Yeah. So the other thing we talked about how the retreat's supposed to be this enhanced experience. So I believe, and it makes me sort of smile a little bit on the inside because of our conversation last week, I believe you have a butler.
So I have a butler who is very, very sweet, but now he kind of knows to kind of leave us alone because you don't need a butler. So just so you understand, there are 147 Sky Suites on the edge.
Yes.
And I presume a butler looks after 10. And that's what I presume. One butler to 10 rooms, I'm guessing. In the same way that it's probably one cabin steward to 10 rooms too. Or cabin attendant to 10 rooms too. And so you're able to WhatsApp them. I sent him a couple of messages, and the reply was pretty slow. But there's nothing really for them to do. Your cabin attendant will do exactly what the butler is doing. So again, it's just a marketing exercise to create a differential between what you get in a standard cabin versus what you get in a suite. The way they look at it is that the butler does food and beverage and the cabin steward does cleaning.
Right.
So that's kind of how it's split up. And I guess that they presume that you'll get a more personal service by nature of the fact that it's split up in that way. So it's an interesting concept, but as I said in a previous episode, these butlers are not trained in butlering in any way that makes them, special. Although saying that, I didn't complain to ours in the nicest possible. I'm not a moaner, I'm not a complainer. Like, I do everything with good humor and sweetness. But in the Retreat Lounge, they serve afternoon tea.
Yes.
They do scones and sandwiches and things, which is very nice.
Yes.
But they don't have teacups. They have
how do you drink the tea?
Coffee cups. Yeah, they have coffee cups. But if you want a teacup, then the bigger version of a coffee cup is a paper cup, like a takeaway Starbucks style cup.
No.
So again, you're paying like top dollar and you're drinking your tea out of paper cups in the Retreat Lounge because they haven't got teacups. So I said my butler works up there in the afternoon tea, so I was like, is there any teacups? No, there's paper cups or there's coffee cups. And that was it. So I was like, oh, that's a shame. And I'd also had to smuggle some Twinings tea bags from the buffet up to the Retreat Lounge because they only had these kind of high-end netted tea bags in little yellow pyramids. And I don't like that brand. To me, that's not... I don't like the flavour of that brand, and they take too long to brew through that netting. So I said to him, I've smuggled a couple of, regular tea bags from downstairs.
Yeah.
The nuance of the fact that I wanted Earl Grey, but I wanted Twinings Earl Grey rather than that brand Earl Grey just didn't really register for him. Anyway, so I got back to the cabin, and he's left a teapot, 2 teacups, and milk, and a whole bunch of Bigelow Earl Grey. So he got the brand wrong, but that's fine. It was a very sweet gesture. And
very
so
nice.
I think that was what he was trying to do,
So they have teacups on board Celebrity Edge, but they don't have them in the Retreat.
No, look, this is a teacup, right? That's a teacup. But the cups that are in the Retreat Lounge are coffee cups, which are wider at the top, narrower at the bottom. A teacup has to be wider at the top, has to be wider to allow the tea to cool. To prove I really am on the edge, here's the I don't like Bigelow as a brand, but that's all he was able to find. So anyway, it's just little things that are really interesting. It's very nuanced, but for me, I don't need a butler. The cabin steward is so nice and does such a great job and would probably get me other stuff if I needed it, So you have
a butler and a cabin steward. There's 2 people
and a
looking
cabin
after
steward.
you.
Yeah, two people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you still get that as an upgrade.
You still get that as an upgrade. So it's a very interesting offering because the food in the retreat is not better than in the main dining room, but you get a lot more service. And as we said on a previous episode, in the main dining room, one waiting team, as in a waiter, assistant waiter, and the sommelier, will probably have 10 tables to work. It's probably nearer 4 or 5 tables in the retreat. But, again, I just don't, it's just not worth the money. It just isn't worth the money. You need to get on board for $1,000 a person for a week. That's the right price for this product. And if you're paying more than that, there's a good chance you're going to be disappointed.
I mean, I'm just fascinated by this whole thing because it sounds so unusual. I know the way you're describing it. But the retreat then, what else does it include? It includes access to the special dining room, which is never open, has access to a cabin that's got the same fit out as the rest of the cabins, but is in a better part of the ship.
It's just a little bit bigger. Well, it's not even in a better part of the ship. It's just a little bit bigger. I mean, a lot of these suite cabins are nowhere near the retreat. That's the other thing. The retreat, the retreat is very far forward. It's where the old crow's nest would be, right? So, that's the issue there.
So what other amenities are there? Like, is it just the dining room and the lounge, and a pool?
And a little pool that's not really a swimming pool. There's a bar up there, I guess. I mean, I'm on an Alaska cruise, so I haven't really made use of the outdoor facilities very much. This is very much a cold weather cruise, and the ship isn't really that suited to being a cold weather cruise either. There's been lots of like water runoff or no water runoff, so there's like huge pooling of water on some of the deck areas and things. That's kind of been interesting to experience. But I just feel like the retreat. For example, the retreat lounge is open all the time, but there's just no vibe in there. There's no vibe. It's not like going to the martini bar where there's this amazing vibe and there's something that's like, it's a bit like a library, but there's no books. In fact, there's some fake books. They've like taken the covers off of. You would hate this. They've ripped the covers off of books that we don't know what they are and stacked them and then tied bows with string, and they're all dotted all over the retreat lounge as decoration. But like,
I've got a suggestion.
It's sacrilegious,
for them. There we go.
really.
They can have a pile of books.
Like it.
They can have a pile of books.
But why not have a pile of real books? Because that gives you, that's a kind of authentic, real, kind of analog experience. And to have fake books
that's it.
Tied in string, just piled up, is to me is like a bit of a waste of space.
If you're watching and you're joining us for the first time in episode 4, you should go back and check out 1, 2, and 3, because up until now, I mean, I think sounds like your opinion of the rest of the ship is unchanged, but the celebrity product has been something that both of us have been raving about. That's general population, right? So we've just been in the rest of the ship. I've been on board Edge, you've been on board a number of the different ships.
It's an average, isn't it? You have to average it out, and pound for pound, Celebrity is still the best quality product in terms of food, in terms of design. We're talking about Edge class, not talking about Solstice class or Millennium class. But the Retreat is just segregation. That's all it is. I cannot see what else it offers. There are perks like reserved seating in the theatre, but they say it's only for special nights. Well, I don't know what a special night is, and I haven't seen any reserved seating in the theatre. So,
no.
But you don't really need to reserve seats in the theatre. The theatre is plenty big enough. So there is lots of false economies, and I just don't get it. I don't get it. I'm 5 days in as a retreat guest, and I just don't get it. And I've been watching a whole bunch of vlogs of people that love the retreat, and I cannot work out what it is that they love. Maybe they like to feel special, but I don't like to feel like that. I like to feel like I'm part of everything else with everybody else.
So how's the rest of the ship been during this? I mean, is the rest of the onboard experience as you would expect it?
Yeah, the ship is great. The staff are fantastic. The ship is beautiful. I have no complaints. It's in great condition. And it's interesting seeing the difference between the Edge and the Beyond, because obviously it's evolved a little bit. And things like little things you might not notice, like the lighting in Cafe El Baccio on the Edge is dark, whereas on the Beyond it's a much brighter space. So just whether they've relit it, they must have relit it in some way. But
we spoke a bit about how the Beyond and the newer ones have the extra deck, a little bit more passengers on board. Do you notice a difference on Edge in terms of space?
I think I'm noticing it more that there's less space, even though there's more space per passenger, because it's a cold weather cruise and nobody's sleeping out on deck or sunbathing or swimming, so it means that all of those passengers are now inside, and that kind of obviously uses up a lot more space. But I tell you, an Alaska cruise, I'd kind of underestimated how good it was. I guess if you're in Europe, the equivalent would be Norwegian fjords, but obviously without the scale and the snow and the whales, the experiences that we're having here, the bald eagles and goodness knows what else. So it's a bucket list trip for certain. and tomorrow we're going to the Dawes Glacier, so I'm looking forward to this experience of going into this, strait, and then the ship doing a 360 to give everybody a view. But the balcony here on this Sky Suite is great. It's huge, and it's I would have liked a lounger. I asked them if they could bring me a lounger, and they said they could bring me a recliner, but they would have to take away one of the chairs. So I said, don't worry about it. Yeah.
So what are the ports you've called in, and what's been the highlight so far?
Skagway first, Juneau second, and third was today, and that was, what's the third one? Juneau, Skagway, Ketchikan. So Ketchikan was first. Today was Skagway. Apologies. And so, yeah, I mean, they're very touristy. I think I enjoyed Ketchikan the most, Skagway the least. But they're just the cruise ships actually own some of the shops now in these ports.
Yep.
So you have to be very careful that you're not giving your money directly to the cruise line as opposed to the local Alaskan community. And so one of the shops I saw today said, it was an Effie shop, and it was like, your princess medallion is accepted here as payment. And I was like, yeah, well, that's because Effie is a cruise ship brand, isn't it?
But if you're using your medallion, or if you're using your cruise card to pay, a percentage of that payment presumably goes to the cruise line, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
As part of, like a credit card fee almost.
Yeah.
I know that Alaska was one of the areas that was... it was quite interesting, actually, during the shutdown, because there was both deep pain from retailers and tour providers, but some of the locals, I remember in the newspapers, voicing almost like a sense of calm, and that the cruise ships weren't swamping their towns anymore. And so the reactivation, I think, was mostly met with positivity, but in some cases, some of the people who lived there were a bit apprehensive to have them come back after, 18 months of not having those levels of crowds coming into places that are, otherwise quite small and picturesque areas.
Yeah, you can see how, I think, for these towns to survive, they've had to really embrace the cruise ships. And so the local people know that without the cruise ships, there would be no tourism, because Skagway, for example, you can't get to by road. You can only get to it by boat or by plane. And so, the cruise ships are essential. But, for me, I've never cared for much for stops. People always say, "Oh, where's your cruise going?" And I'm like, who cares? I'm not getting off the ship. And so invariably, that's because I'm so used to doing transatlantics. And so obviously,
you're a sea day person, aren't you?
I'm a sea day person. And obviously, as people know, sea days are great because the people that do get off give you more space to be on the ship. But one thing I found interesting that I wasn't expecting, I flew to Vancouver, and then we did US Customs and Border at Vancouver just before we boarded the ship, and that took like an hour and a half. So even if you're a suite guest or a suite passenger, you're not getting any benefits. There's no they don't speed it up. There was no express luggage service for retreat guests. We didn't get our luggage.
Is that because you upgraded, or is that for everyone?
I didn't see any place to drop retreat luggage off. It just, I think, depends what port you depart from. I think, Port of Miami probably has a better setup, whereas Vancouver, the problem with Canada Place is it's a multi-use port, so it's a conference center, and it's a hotel, and it's a whole bunch of things, as well as being a berth for 2 cruise ships.
You have this expertise now in booking a upgrade into the retreat, and we are the expert cruise show. If somebody was, say you're the sort of person who the retreat, maybe you've traveled before in the retreat, you paid the $10,000, or you like the sound of the very, as you say, very attentive, very sort of personable, in your face kind of service. What would be the best tips, do you think, to getting that at close to what is a reasonable price? I mean, obviously the upgrades is one way. Do you do what you do and not do the first upgrade? Do you wait? Like, how do you balance that?
I think that you can book a regular cabin, an infinite veranda, and then you can call the cruise line at various times when various flash sales come on and say, how much are you going to charge me to upgrade? And sometimes an upgrade is a lot less than paying the retail list price, the way it's advertised in the first place. So there's that. Obviously, celebrity move-up is a really good option, but I just don't know that it's worth paying any more than the lowest bid or the next lowest bid.
Yeah.
But, everybody's different. Depends how much money you have. I don't have great riches to spend on this stuff. So because I keep saying that, the rich and famous do not travel on cruise ships. The retreat
they have their own yachts,
not,
don't they?
Right. The retreat is not a yacht. It's a segregated space within a cruise ship that gives you access to go down to the main theatre and things that you would, a much larger casino, things that you wouldn't get if you travelled on Seabourn, for example, which would be much smaller, where the entertainment is more, is more lounge based as opposed to theatre based. But so you've got access to the stuff that everybody else is doing. But I tell you, the best food, if you want it hot and if you want it good, the best food is still in the Ocean View Cafe. You just can't beat it.
Yeah, amazing. And you had
really
an experience.
Can't beat it.
You had an experience in Blue, which is another restaurant. It's not one of the 4 main dining rooms. Can you? I've never eaten in there. I was on Celebrity Edge. We were only on for a short voyage, so I never got a chance to experience it. Could you walk us through what that's like?
So Blue is for Aqua Class guests, but again, if you're in the retreat, you can use Blue whenever you want. It's open for do they do a breakfast service? I think they do. They try and do a healthier menu. I would say it's a menu that makes you leaves you more hungry. So you're just going to go. They should have a sign in Blue that says "This way to the Ocean View Cafe," because that's where you're going to be going as soon as you finish your meal. It's fine, but they're creating categories and they're creating products that enable them the opportunity to upsell to people that have the means.
Sure.
But you're not really getting anything any better. And I found the menu to be a bit weird and inconsistent. They're saying it's healthy, but then there's a cheeseburger on the menu. So why would you offer that? One thing I do want to talk about though is the alternative menus for vegans and vegetarians and pescatarians. There isn't one in the Lumini. This is what's so interesting, is that our friends are vegan and they ask for the vegan menu and they look at them like mad, even though they told the cruise ship in advance. Wow. And so then they say, well, we can give you the vegan menu from the main dining room.
Wow.
So you've paid 10 grand for the room.
Yeah.
You're in a dining room that you're only allowed into in short periods during the day, where the food is no better. It's just fancier with more garnish, but it's not actually better food.
So what I'm hearing is that the Edge class is a great cruise option if you're going to book for, looking for a cruise ship and you're going to book a cruise experience. But if you're looking at spending $10,000 for a really luxurious experience, you're probably better off going with something like your Seabourns or your Silver Seas or your Windstar, where you can really get that smaller ship, very attentive, more one-on-one sort of service with the crew than what you might get in, say, the Retreat on board a ship within a ship concept.
100%. Look, the Edge class is the newest and best design of all the celebrity ships, so choose the Edge class, right? As we've said in previous episodes, unless you want a smaller ship, I would skip Solstice. I know some people like it, but I'm not a fan, and I would go with the revolutionized, the two revolutionized of the Millennium class. But in the main, Edge class, Edge, Apex, Beyond, and Ascent and the new XL, those are 100%. You don't need to be in the Retreat to have a very high-end experience. It is so chic.
Yeah.
It is, the service is fantastic. The food in the main dining rooms, in the buffet, is fantastic. And here, I think I might have said before, but this is the other tip, is that you could literally pay for speciality dining every night, and it still wouldn't cost you anything like what the Retreat costs. So you could go into the Fine Cut Steakhouse, you could go into Le Petit Chef, or whatever it's called, the Daniel Boulud restaurant. You could actually do an Eden, which is, I kind of hadn't mentioned this, but the Eden restaurant I think is the best food at sea. And I only did it on the Beyond. I didn't do it this time on the Edge. But absolutely, without a doubt, hands down, the best food at sea. So again, these specialty restaurants are heavily subsidized. You only pay between $40 and $75 per person for a meal. So you could just do specialty dining for like 4 of your 7 nights and feel like you're in first class.
I mean, I think that's the thing. Like when I did my voyage on the Edge, we obviously went to various different dining rooms. But even going to Normandy and going to Tuscan and going to Cyprus, like they're just, the service was so good and the food quality was so good, and then the rest of the ship is so impressive. And as you say, it's so chic, and the cabins and the infinite veranda room that we had, just the fit out so elegant to look at, and the corridors are so beautiful, and the amenities are so, they wow you so much, and that show lounge at the front just makes you think, like, where have the rest of the cruise ships been all these years? That I was wondering at the time, like, what are they doing in the Retreat that makes anybody want to go anywhere else but this? And
I don't want to talk down on the Retreat, because I understand that some people want to feel elevated and special. I happen to be an introvert, and introverts, we don't want to be made a fuss of. And, I don't want to get too deep into the psychology of this, but there is psychology here, and the people we were traveling with are much more extrovert compared to us. And so they enjoy the whole kind of, the whole experience of being made a fuss of. And I just like curl into a little ball. And so you need to know your personality type, because I think that makes a big difference. I like to be a quiet observer, and just because I'm British, I guess I'm used to a more subtle style of service. I mean, we had one guy in the Retreat dining room who was the main server. Very nice, he was. Very good server, but he was huge. The guy was like 6'2" or 6'4" or something. Not quite as tall as you, Chris.
Like my size.
Yeah, exactly. He was a big guy. And in order to kind of see if we'd all finished, he would like from a distance walk around the table with these huge strides, with these giant feet, and look to see like if we'd finished. So there was no subtlety because you could feel that he was right there. You know what I mean? He was like, he had such presence. And I guess the more British service that I would prefer is somebody working from a distance who's moving their eyes as opposed to their body.
Yeah, like I remember back in the 90s when I first started going on ships, and the dining room setup was very different on the older ships, and they used to have these very strategically placed serving stations throughout the dining room that would have warming areas, and they used to flambe stuff in the dining rooms back then. We can't do that now because of fire and health and safety and all that sort of thing. But the wait staff would wait in these serving areas, and you'd watch them, and they'd be monitoring the room the whole time, monitoring their tables the whole time. And then when it was time to come out, then they'd come out over and do the service. So the whole design of these rooms now has changed, which makes that so much harder. It's not the staff's fault. It's the way that the ergonomics have been designed around how the service is to be operated. And
when I was chatting to the executive chef, he was like, "There's just the galley is not really big enough to really specialize for Lumine." And that's why they had to bring any specialist food, whether vegan or vegetarian or pescatarian or kosher or anything like that. They would have to bring that up from decks 3, effectively, 3 and 4, where the galley is.
That is actually, though, like, I mean, we say we don't want to criticize the product, and I've never experienced the Retreat, but if you're building something to the class and the standard that the Edge class is built to, and then you forget to make the galley big enough for the specialty dining, that's a problem.
Sure.
Like, that is a real, honest problem.
I would say it's more of an oversight, and I guess that most people wouldn't know that the food was being prepared downstairs and was being brought upstairs. Sure. It really is upstairs, downstairs, very much like Downton Abbey, So if you're into that stuff, I get it. But, I would be inclined to just get yourself a regular, infinite veranda cabin and pay as little as possible for it. You can rebook when there's a sale or a flash sale. You can call them and they'll adjust the price down. They're very good at that at Celebrity. And then if you are signed up for these promotional emails, and you get a celebrity move up offering, just bid the lowest or the second lowest and just see what you end up with. But I just want to make the point that these ships now are so good, these Edge class ships are so good that you really do not need to be in the Retreat. That's only my experience, and as I say, I speak as a kind of introverted British guy. I suppose if you're an extroverted American, maybe you love that kind of thing. But, for me, I have realized that I'm a steerage passenger, and I will always be a steerage passenger.
Thank goodness that the steerage quality on the Edge class is a bit nicer than it was on the Olympic class back in the day.
Well, celebrity has come a long way, and that's the thing. And I would presume, because the Retreat is so much better on the Edge class than it is on the Solstice and on the Millennium class. So I think this advice kind of works across the board. It really is, because it's quite a jump in price. A little bit like the jump from an inside cabin to a balcony cabin can often be 3 or 4 times the price. Well, this is 3 or 4 or even sometimes 6 times the price from a balcony up to a... And I suppose the other thing is that you get a proper balcony. And if you are one of those people that doesn't like the infinite veranda because it's not a proper balcony and you're not stepping outside, I guess that might be a reason to do a retreat cabin and get a nice big size traditional balcony. But like I say, there's these little porthole verandas at either end of the ship. And if they haven't sold out, I recommend those too.
But especially, I guess, if you're going to do the upgrade bid, like for what you paid, the room looked like you were getting great value for money. Potentially for 10 grand, it's one of those things that you want the service to make up for the cost, and I did find it earlier in the conversation quite interesting how if you've been upgraded, you don't get the same robes and just little things that I would have assumed it would have cost them more to have the person spend the time removing the robes and switching them than it would be to give you the full product. Because the thing is, if you go and you get upgraded, and this is how the airlines do it, you get upgraded and then you fall in love with the product, you can never go back to what you were before. You're going to pay next time if you fall in love with the product, right? So give you the whole experience.
It incentivizes people to want to do that. And I agree with you. It seems overly complex to take some things away and not give the drinks package. And it's also embarrassing. That's the other thing about being in first class, is that you don't want to be like, oh, I've only got the water package. I mean, my card on it says H2O, which suggests it's the water package. And so, you're in first class, but you're like, oh, is this included? Oh, and you're, don't pour that wine. I don't know if I can afford it. So again, you're right. They should just give you everything. They should just swallow it and know that if they give you that experience, there's more chance that you're going to want to book the retreat next time, because it includes drinks, it includes Wi-Fi, it includes all the extras. Yeah. But I would also remind people that if you book extras, including specialty dining and Wi-Fi, if the price goes down and you're a US resident, you can cancel your booking, get refunded and rebook at the cheaper price, almost right up to sailing day. So, and how much? Because I think one of the barriers that would stop so many people from doing that or even thinking about doing it is just like the idea of how much time it's going to take. Like it just sounds so stressful. But you've done it many times. How easy is it in the US? You just do it on the app while you're lying in the bath. I mean, it literally, it takes no time at all. You literally just go...
You can cancel your booking on the app.
Yeah, you can cancel anything on the app. You just go into the Wi-Fi setting and where you go to buy Wi-Fi and it says reserved, and then you just click cancel.
So simple.
You don't even need to call them, You don't even need to call them, and then you just rebook it at the new price. So there's a lot of options there. But yeah, I mean, look, I am on one of the greatest trips I have ever had. I think I would have enjoyed it as much if I was in a regular cabin as opposed to the retreat. I think I've made that point, but I don't want that to deter people from having the opportunity, especially of seeing Alaska, these vistas that you're seeing here in this backdrop, this photograph that I took. That sky suite, lying in bed and having those curtains open and just watching these vistas go by without even having to get up, that was priceless, and that was definitely worth the cost of the upgrade. So Yeah, Alaska is a whole other conversation, and I think it would be magnificent on any ship, but it was framed in this sky suite balcony for me in such a way that it was widescreen, pretty much like this image now. It was
remarkable.
It was remarkable, and I didn't think I would ever see that.
Obviously, because we're mates, you were sending me pictures every day of the different ports.
Well, I would do that if we weren't mates. I mean,
superb. And some of them have been on screen during this conversation, so everyone can see. Like, the imagery is just amazing. It looks like, those old postcards that you used to get back in the day when people used to send mail to each other. It's like one of those every morning being sent to you.
Yes, wish you were here. Yeah. Exactly that.
Yeah.
So I just have to thank Celebrity for really being so brilliant. They are as long as they maintain this standard, because we've talked about other lines, like Princess that are kind of dropping included things, and Royal, who have dropped the second room refresh in the evenings and stuff. I think.
Well, what will become their differentiator is if they don't drop the service and everyone else does, because particularly post-pandemic, and I've noticed that across multiple brands, there are certain things that were done away with because of health and safety or whatever. That's perfectly fine to bring back now that they haven't done. Not just cruise lines, but airlines, hotels, everything. And if Celebrity maintains a standard that is the expectation, because of course, whether you're satisfied is the gap between expectation and reality, right? If they keep the expectation to match the reality, they will continue to shine. If they start to cut corners everywhere, then they'll have the same complaints everyone else does.
And to confirm that point, do you remember the old QE2 buffets with the ice sculptures and the seafood towers and these incredible, watermelon sculptures and everything? Celebrity did that on the last lunch. They said to us, "You've got to come to the buffet for the last lunch." And I'll show some images now, but you wouldn't believe, I've never seen it on other cruise lines. Cunard certainly don't do this kind of stuff anymore.
They don't seem to, do they?
The artistry that goes into carving roses out of a watermelon or a horse's head out of provolone cheese. It was beautiful, and it's completely unnecessary. One of the chefs said to me, people don't even notice. He said, we do all this stuff and people don't notice. They just make such a beeline for the food that they don't even see it. We were so moved by the effort and the artistry of these displays that that is a reason alone to keep going back to Celebrity.
I think a lot of people subliminally see it too. The chef might watch and think that they're just making a beeline, but if it was just a table with food on it, it wouldn't have that same sparkle. Actually, the last time I saw that on Cunard, it was in the main dining room, and that was like 2013, 2014. But there used to be one every night on the old ships,
right?
On some
but
cruises.
This is
and I know that's a bit wasteful. That's probably a bit wasteful. But once a cruise, that makes sense.
And this is another example of why being in the Retreat dining room, the Luminae dining room, where they don't do any of that stuff, means that people who are paying top dollar for this first-class experience are not seeing these sculptures, unless they're slipping out for a late-night snack. So, again, that kind of, for me, that just kind of confirms my view that with Edge, you can be in steerage and feel like a superstar. You really can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we have to...
Look, thank you so much for bringing us this. It's great to hear that firsthand information.
Well, it's nice to be able to do it from the ship. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like being on board and being able to share this, thanks to Starlink and thanks to the technology that we carry with us these days, means that whenever you and I are traveling, we will make sure that we record episodes of the Expert Cruise Show whilst we're at sea. It just kind of, there's nothing better than being there and actually being in it, as opposed to having to remember it a few months later.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. We'll see you next week. Yeah. Happy sailing.